Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. Today is one of my favorite things that we do. This is a podcast collides episode, but this is an international edition. And I have with me today the podcast host of the Relatable Voice, Lucia. And I need you to pronounce your last name for the audience because I'm not good.
Lucia Matuonto.
Matuonto. Okay. Yes. Will you please tell the audience about yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. And I'm a mother. Thank you. I'm a mother, an author, a podcaster, and a physical therapist. So basically, I started this month also a program of interviews called Uncut with Lucia by wordauthors.org. And I lived in 6 different countries, so I feel like I'm from everywhere, but I was raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I currently live in Spain with my wonderful husband. I love to write, to run on the beach, drink coconuts, and paint when I have time, of course. I'm sure there are other things that I will try, but that's for now.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. When someone goes over to your information on Instagram, the Relatable Voice, they can click in and they can go to your website.
Yes.
And what's your website called?
My website is www.luciamatuonto.com.
And you have numerous titles to your name. You're very, as we say, verse. And, audience, when I say verse, I mean she is everywhere and anywhere with anything. So could you tell the audience about your titles and everything that you do?
Yes, of course. So basically, I went through different phases in my life in which I developed skills and experience in multiple areas. I lived in 6 different countries, as I told you. Yes, and it includes countries in Middle East. For example, in Bahrain, I was working as a physical therapist, and I had the chance to give Pilates classes. So I ended up teaching one of the princesses and other royals.
Whoa.
Yes. Was an amazing experience. So in Dubai, I gave speeches and I was a consultant for a Neuro-rehabilitation method. Because of this, I had the chance to teach healthcare professionals in different countries like Egypt, Malaysia, Portugal, Brazil, and others. And I also lived in Germany. So when I moved to Germany, I launched a new exercise method called Brazilian fitness. And it was very well received by women there. So in Brazilian fitness, we used to dance to warm up. And then, of course, we were lifting weight and making crunches, making some exercise for many different parts of the body. And it was in a very fun way. So in the US, I restarted painting and writing, which is something that I always loved, but I didn't focus on for many years. And I finished my book trilogy last year, Zoe the Crab, in Spain, here where I am now. In reality, even when I was treating children with special needs, art was always present through storytelling and the illustrations I used to make for kids. So that's why I have so many titles. It's because through my life, I've been doing so many things, like been trying different things. And this is something I love to do.
Okay, and that sounds really versatile. Once again, being able to do these things while having a main job as a physical therapist. So you have a podcast, The Relatable Voice. You can find it on Instagram at the Relatable Voice. And I will tell everyone you should subscribe to this, give it a hard listen. You will find some credible things there that you would like to hear. Now, could you tell the audience and the people that don't know about your podcast what goes on inside your podcast? What you doing over there?
Yeah, the Relatable Voice just started. I released 4 episodes, but I recorded many interviews already, and I'm super excited about it. I'm very pleased that many people are eager to be on the show. It has surpassed my expectations. And for example, I'm interviewing people who talk about sustainability, coaching, books, like astrology, travelers, like mental health, fitness. And also the idea is to be able to talk with interesting people, feature their work, and add value to my listeners, and of course, keeping my mind busy. When this pandemic started, I was very worried and started being anxious about it. But focusing with the activities I like the most, like writing, painting, and networking, I was able to ground myself and turned my fear into an opportunity to create, produce, and learn new things. And I'm so glad that I'm talking to you today about my podcast.
And I'm glad that we have you on about your podcast. Now, let me ask you this. You've reiterated about the 6 different countries. Now, being in these countries, how do these different countries influence how you write?
I always use themes as inclusion, diversity, and equality in my books. So working with people from other nationalities, religions, and cultures opened my mind tremendously and made me grow in different aspects. I will explain you why. Okay. So, for example, in the book Zoe the Crab, Zoe calls attention to values such as inclusion and diversity. For example, the main character is a crab, is a little crab. And she's very funny and loves to dance, but she ends up having an accident and loses her claw. So in reality, I want to show kids and their parents that having special needs or being different is completely normal. And I learned it a lot because I've been working with kids in these many different countries. And I learned that it's okay to be different. And it's so incredible to be able to learn about other cultures, their food, and having different hair or skin colors or speaking different languages. It's so amazing. And it influences, of course, during my writing. Yes.
Okay. Now, you have a company, and inside the company, you offer coaching in the areas of publishing, illustrating, video tutorials, and a few other things. It's always amazing to be able to learn from someone. That's one thing I always tell people. Never stop learning from people, because some people learn things. You can take it, put a different spin on it. And we have efficiency, but then you put proficiency to it. And proficiency, if it's proficient, nothing's going to stop that. So what can you tell me about the coaching areas that you offer in publishing, writing, illustrating, and your video tutorials?
Yes, actually, I work with a media group. As I said before, it's wordauthors.org. And I tried to do things by myself, like illustrations and also translations. But in the end, I was so busy. And then I started this partnership. And now I have a team of people who work with me. So I started getting a lot of requests to make, illustrations. And basically I said, I need help. So what happened is at wordauthors.org, we offer all these media services, and we do the interviews like Uncut with Lucia that we just started. We released already 2 episodes, and we interview authors like book authors, songwriters, and wordsmiths. So we offer also editing, translations, dubbing, illustrations, book cover, and like everything that is related to books and arts as well, as you can see. Yeah.
Okay, yes, you can definitely see she has a lot of artwork behind her. So here goes the curveball. The audience doesn't know how we prepare for shows. And when we prepare for shows, we do questions. So we have a certain lineup, and we never truly follow any structure because everything we do is organic. We do a pre-call before we start shows. So here are the mysterious questions.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were to come meet you on the street today,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted it to become part of your podcast, if they wanted to just be a guest on there to be enlightened, just to tell their story, how would they get in touch with you to be on your podcast? Like after if they initially met you on the street and they're like, "Hey, I want to be on your podcast. I listened to it. How do they approach you to be on your podcast?"
So if someone approaches me, first I'll be very happy because I love knowing new people and also giving the opportunity to them to show them their work. So basically, I would tell them to send me an email with all the information they have, like social media, books, illustrations, what they want to talk about, and I will check it out. I read all the emails people send me, and I try my best to put them on my show or also at Uncut with Lucia.
Okay, so you got different venues to put them on there. All right,
yes.
So here's one of our hot seat questions. Okay, You're at home. You and your husband are done everything you're doing for the day. You got a second to put a set of headphones on. What's the first podcast you're listening to?
Actually, I listen to The Moth.
Okay.
The Moth Radio Hour is a podcast that I've been listening for many years, and it's amazing. I just love to listen to these stories.
Okay. And the reason that I ask questions like this is because some people, like when they listen to these shows, they assume that because we are podcasters that we don't listen to other podcasts. Now, obviously, I explained to you my second part of what I do in podcasting. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I usually have 12 to 14-hour rides. So where I live in West Virginia. So West Virginia is what you call the north-south and the south-north when you're looking on the East Coast. So I'm in that middle area. So about a week ago, I had a trip to Boston. And instead of flying out because of COVID-related things, I took a 12-hour drive. So, round trip, I had 24 hours to listen to podcasts.
Wow.
So inside of that, I had your podcast in there, and I listened to it. And over some time, I think it was, what day was it? I don't remember exactly the date, but I reached out to you after I listened to your podcast because that's how I do things. I listen to your podcast. I'm trying to pull up all the information real quick. I usually keep it all close by. And I listened to your podcast. It was on, where did I listen to it? It's on my Google. That's what it's on. It's on my Google. And the episode that I listened to, I'm pulling them up right here. Derek Addison.
Yes, Derek Addison. He was my first guest.
I listened to him, and I listened to Jennifer. Can you pronounce her last name?
Jennifer Sin.
Yes, I listened to those. And then the last two I haven't got to just yet. But inside your podcast, I was like, wow, you have an it factor. And an it factor is something like it's marketable. I don't just go out and I'm not listening to every podcast and say, oh, I can take this podcast and take it to the moon. But when I listened to your podcast, I was like, there's quality there. I seen that there was quantity in it, but the quality there, that's something you can't teach. And inside these podcast collide episodes, I always get the podcasters to give a little advice to fledgling podcasters or people that are on their way up. So the next line of question for you, like I said, I told you I would give you some questions that are prepared, and then I throw you some curveballs. So here's my first question to you. And these questions, I relate them to a TV show that used to come on in America. It was called 2020. It's a TV magazine. It had Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, and John Stossel. So these are hard-hitting questions. John Stossel was funny, but I don't do any of the funny questions. So here's the first question, and this is the Diane Sawyer question, the first lead-off one, is this. What made you start your podcast? Exactly. Like what day, what time, what made you decide to start it?
I always want to have my own podcast, but I didn't have time nor courage. I believe it happened when the pandemic started, like March last year or April. We were in complete lockdown in Spain. And I said, I need to communicate with people. I can't meet them here in the bars. So I need to find my way to communicate and to, have more things to do. So I decided to do the podcast, to start the podcast in the same week that I decided to publish my book. It was like almost 1 year ago, but in reality, it took a lot of time to start because, it's not easy. But basically, it was almost 1 year ago. And I published the first episode 2 months ago.
Okay. So
but the pandemic was the reason for starting it.
So if it hadn't been for the pandemic, we may not have a podcast out of you today.
Maybe not.
Okay.
Exactly.
What was the pressure on you? Because, pandemic, we're inside, so it's kind of like what we call in America cabin fever. Everybody can have a big space, but still it's a tight space no matter where you are. Mm-hmm. So how did you make time to do a podcast and finish your book?
Actually, I'm not working as a physical therapist here. So I started having a lot of time. Okay. And during the day, yeah. And also, I know what you mean when you say cabin fever. Yeah. So what I was doing was like 2 hours a day I was writing. 2 hours a day I was thinking, planning my podcast. 2 hours a day I was trying to exercise. Yeah.
Okay.
And the other 2 hours I was listening to podcasts. So 8 hours and then sleeping.
So you made a job out of it.
Yes. My book, I started writing it in April, and in June, in the end of June, I released the first one. And after 2 months, I published number 2. And after 2 months, number 3. So the whole trilogy was done in 4-5 months.
Okay, and real quick, just because this is for advertising purposes, and we definitely like to do this on the show, can you name all 3 titles and tell everybody where they can find those titles?
Yes, the name of the book is Zoe the Crab, and book 1 is Lost on the Beach. Book 2 is Mystery Island, and number 3 is The Rescue Mission. Our listeners can find the books on Amazon and everywhere. If you type on Google, you can find my books on Barnes & Nobles and Books A Million and Google, Apple Store. So you can find them in many places. And also I have ebook, books, and now the audiobooks are also available on Audible. Yes. And it's amazing that I had an amazing review in Canada. And people started referring this book in the schools, in some schools, of course, in Canada. And this is something so rewarding, knowing that the kids are enjoying this story of a little crab who writes in a diary every day, telling her adventures. So yeah, basically they can find me on Amazon and also on Instagram, Lucia Matuonto, author, and also my websites that you already told.
Okay, and another cool thing there provided, and everyone knows that checks out the show notes for this podcast at the very when this episode is published in the near future. In the show notes, it'll have everything that she just told you there, so that you can just click a link and go get a book and enjoy it. Now, back to podcasting real quick. What advice would you give to podcasters? Because see, you have a special situation. Mm-hmm. English is not your first language.
No, maybe the third or fourth.
Your native tongue, correct, is Portuguese, right?
Yes, my native language is Portuguese.
So going from Portuguese, and I know certain type of conjugations inside the Spanish language, because everybody goes conozco hablar, leer, escribe, y, with Spanish, everybody knows a little bit of this and that. So yes. The conjugation of your words to Spanish to English, that's a lot to take in your mind. That's about like being 2 MacBook computers or 3 MacBooks.
Yes, exactly. But I speak 5 languages because I also learned German and I also learned Italian because my husband is Italian American. Yes, so it's crazy. As I said, sometimes I mix everything. But I love the fact that I didn't give up, like learning some languages like German, which is very difficult. And Spanish and Italian are easier because of they are from the same root than Portuguese. But basically, yeah, I have 5 languages here, and I try to keep in contact with my friends. Like we always try to speak another languages, so it helps me to keep instead of forgetting everything.
Okay, now let me ask you this. In the near future, inside your podcast, are you going to do episodes in all 5 languages?
I would like to. Yes, I would like to. But most of my listeners are like speak English, so I don't know if I will be able, but maybe I can do like a bilingual.
You can do a bilingual episode, yes. Just an encouraging thought there, because you never know. And like we always say, in the grand scheme of things, that attracts all listeners by doing all that. The crazy thing, and I always tell everybody, when you have a podcast, it's a huge voice. I always give everybody a quick testimonial about themselves. Lucia, with what you have going on, you have to be really proud of yourself, because not a lot of people would bridge gaps like you're doing.
Thank you.
They wouldn't try to be informative, and at the same time with the youth, helping out with the young people, with with artistry and with your books. That's something very commendable, and that's something I do want to give you a pat on the back about, for the simple fact that not a lot of people are trying to be multifaceted. Like me, for instance, I just do podcasts. Yeah, I have other ventures that I do outside of the podcasting, but they fall in my hobbies. They're not to help anybody. I just want people to do what I do and not worry about nothing else. So what you're doing, that is amazing.
Thank you.
So, one big thing that we always ask, and this is the Barbara Walters question, this is the serious question. What is in the future for you?
Actually, I'm planning to keep doing the Uncut with Lucia, because it's an amazing way to show people, authors. The authors can put their voice, show their faces, and like it's a good way to promote authors, because we always have a name on the book, in the book, sorry. We always have a name, our name on the cover, but nobody see us. So I want to be able to show authors to their readers, like to show our voice. So Uncut is a show where, I will be interviewing various authors and writers in a more open and unedited way. So if you are a writer, you can come and speak from your heart. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like a candid interview, which I'll be allowing, the authors to show themselves. Like all authors are welcome. And my plans are that this program can be well known and more people can come to be featured in it. Yeah, and also I'm writing a new book that I will be releasing in the summer, like next summer. Uh-huh. Yeah, and for a while I have only these two things.
And hopefully, one thing that I hope that you do after this, you continue to keep doing your podcast and jump on other podcasts so that they can hear your voice and hear your message.
Yes. And I of course, I want to keep the podcast, and I really appreciate your tips, the tips you are giving to people. That's so much appreciated. Like, it will help me a lot.
I hope those videos do. And like I said, on that tip, I'll put a little bit in there on me on this one. The reason that I do those videos is because I see, we're all human and we all make money, whatever. But I see people offering to start a podcast, to do this and that, $800 US dollars to start a podcast. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Then you have someone that gives them the $50 special or the $100 special. And I say no to that. I tell people that you can start your podcast for free. Obviously, you have to buy the equipment. You have to, or you got to use a good phone or something that has a good microphone. But you can do podcasts. You can be successful with them by just researching what you want to do.
Exactly.
And someone like you, that it seems like you're very strong in your convictions. You're going to keep doing what you want to do, and you're doing it in a positive manner, and you're very open to listen and to hear different things. That's what the podcasting world needs more of. So I want to thank you for that too. So here's another one of these out the door questions. What advice would you give to someone that wants to start a podcast? This is something I ask everybody that's been on the show for Podcast Collides. What would you tell them to do to how to get started?
I think the most important thing is to be able to communicate and make yourself visible.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the first tip, because things are not always easy, but with focus and determination, positive results can be achieved. I believe like art is everywhere and it's in every one of us. And a podcast is an art. Yeah, it's the art of communication. You should follow like your heart and really go for that. Be consistent with it and keep learning. By doing this, you not only focus on the end results, but you enjoy the process. Enjoying the process. This is the best thing about the podcast. Yeah? Yes. Because like when I started, I said, I was nervous, of course. I was interviewing people that I didn't know. And it was the same for the other side. Yeah, like people who were being interviewed by me. And although I was having all this mixed feeling, I was enjoying it because I'm doing something that I was really afraid of, you know?
Yes.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. It's something like this. So go for that. You know that the secret is to communicate and make yourself visible and enjoy the process.
And I like that answer, to enjoy the process. And that's something that I try to tell people, you know, when they get started out with this, everybody, when you usually, by the time you get to me, it's a business model. And I always put a disclaimer on my video for the hobbyists, which are the people that are starting out, and some people that just do it for hobby because it's a launching pad for voiceover careers, for art. Podcasts usually are a middle point to something else. And then some people, the podcasts are just everything, like in my realm. I tell them enjoy that process, like you said. And the best advice that I can give anyone that does a podcast, and I'll even give you this advice, always tailor to what you think is best for your podcast. I listen to people, and we're always open to learn things. But when someone comes to me like with criticism, I'm going to ask you how you deal with that in just a second. With criticism, if it's very structured and it has sound detail into it, I'll look into it, even if it has no true narrative to it. If someone comes through and they're like point A, B, and C and D don't match, I'll ask them why A doesn't match to C, why B doesn't match to D, to just see. And if they can come up with valid points, then I'm looking in a different perspective. That's my thing with criticism. If I see it and I can look in a different perspective with it, and it's something that goes forward and makes me progress, that's how I use criticism. How about you? How do you use criticism? Or how do you take it in?
Yeah, I take it in a very good way. As long I see that it's not something to make me feel bad, because critics, there are many ways to criticize someone's work. Yeah, I'm very open to critics, and I really enjoy it because you can always improve when you listen to other people's advice. For example, reviews. Book reviews are very important to me. Yes. Because through the reviews, I'll be able to know where I'm having mistakes and how can I learn from these mistakes. Yeah, I'll give you an example. My books, the Zoe the Crab trilogy, is for kids from 8 or 7 to 12, 80 years old. I say that the book is for from 8 to 80 because the whole family enjoyed it. But my cover was more like, it looks like it's for kids, younger kids, like 4 or 5. When people see the cover, I mean the first cover. And then people start telling me, Lucia, I love this book, but it looks like it's for younger kids. And I say, oh, thank you. It added me a lot, because in the next book, I will think better about making the cover. Yeah. So these are the critics that I really enjoy. And I ask people, please write reviews. I love seeing reviews. And even if they are not completely positive, of course, we cannot have always positive, like 5, but it's good to read the reviews. And I, of course, accept critics in a very good way, because they will help me to grow. And you have to be like, I'm developing thick skin.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know some people will just criticize because they want to criticize, but others, they are helping us a lot. And this is also for podcasts, not only for books. And
yes.
Yeah, your work, it's very, very important. And kids are very honest.
Yes.
And they have no hidden agenda. If they don't like it, they will tell you.
Yes, they will. And even say with me, and what I deal with, because I probably listen to 30, 40 podcasts a week if I have time to.
Wow.
And keeping up with my regulars. And sometimes I listen to things, and some of them, that it factor I'm talking about. Not everybody's voice has that it factor in it. Some people just have a voice that's just narrow and things like that. And I'll tell them certain ways to enhance and stuff like that. Never anything to be mean or anything like that. Always trying to help. And I like the way that in what you said about criticism, because that will help other people. That's one thing that I always tell people with podcasts, and especially with this podcast, Collides deal. When we're doing these shows, like we're interacting right now, it's 1:40 where I'm at. It's 6 something, almost 7 o'clock where you are. Um, this is a monument. This is a piece of history. Someone's going to take this when me and you are long gone. They're going to be like in 2021 on March 15th. These words were said. It will be a Google search at some point. And when you say profound statements like you've dropped at least 4 profound statements today. Those are things that are going to set people up for the future. So those are things that I want you to be proud of. And I wanted to thank you for being on West Virginia in Commonplace, this podcast Collide episode. It was a pleasure having you on here. So before we end this, is there anybody you would like to give a shout out to? Anybody you want to give a big thank you to for helping you along the way? It could be a human, it could be an entity, it could be anything. Who has helped you get along this way?
Yeah, I want to say thank you for my husband. He's amazing. He always supports me so much. And also, I want to say thank you for Gaurav. Gaurav is my partner with the wordauthors.org. He believed that I was going to be able to interview people and to formulate good questions and to have a very good approach with them. And because of him, I am doing this Uncut with Lucia. I have my own program, and this is priceless. So these are the people. And of course, my mom, because my mom was the first person who always believed in myself.
Okay. All right. So once again,
I want to say thank you to you too, of course, for this great opportunity to be featured on West Virginia podcast.
All right, most definitely. We appreciate you coming on. So once again, before we sign off, I want to tell you thank you, Lucia. And can you pronounce that last name for the audience one last time?
Lucia Matuonto.
All right, and I hope everyone got that. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.